Hello, everybody. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com, and this is going to be a review live stream, uh, but it's also going to be, a little bit of a Green Lantern geek out live stream. So I've invited Hal Jordan to come join us and just stand by because it's his 80th anniversary after all. Well, technically, it's not his 80th anniversary. He came along in the 60s. Since I came along in the 60s and I'm nowhere near my 80th anniversary, can't be his either. Math works that way. It is the 80th anniversary of the Green Lantern name, however. Uh, that first Green Lantern having been Alan Scott. So, weirdly enough, Alan Scott only gets one story in this book that we're reviewing here, which is the Green Lantern 80th anniversary, 100-page, super spectacular, once-in-a-lifetime, heavy-bound event, because they just couldn't come up with a longer title, I guess. So I'm just going to kind of go through this story by story, pinup by pinup, and render my opinion. And as I said, the first story is an Alan Scott story, so that's appropriate. It should be. There should have been more Alan Scott in here. First of all, general speaking, the Catwoman 80th anniversary special, the Joker 80th anniversary special, they all tended to tell stories from different places in time. So you could tell this is a distinctly 60s kind of Joker. This is a distinctly 80s kind of Joker. Same with Catwoman. This is a 100-page, heavy-bound Tales of the Green Lantern Corps. There is mostly no this is a times past story. Obviously, the Alan Scott story is going to take place in the early 1940s, and there's another story that does distinctly take place in sort of the 70s. And I'll get to that when I get there. But for the most part, these are all, they could have happened as a backup feature in any Green Lantern or Tales of the Green Lantern Corps issue. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. This is a beautiful cover, by the way. I picked this one because it does highlight Alan Scott on the front, and that's what I wanted out of this. This story with Alan Scott is by James Tynion IV with Gary Frank as an artist, which is very super cool. We get this opening scene here with Alan Scott remembering something that happened on the train that crashed. Now, he's shirtless, and there's a man's hand on his back shoulder here. It looks like they're still trying to go with the Earth 2, the new Earth 2 version of Alan Scott, wherein they're trying to make Alan Scott gay. It worked okay with that Earth 2 version. I'm not sure if this is the Earth 2 version or a 1940s version. I'm going with the 1940s version just because of the styles of the vehicles and the dress. But it's a very subtle story where he's just visiting a grieving mother. His friend Jimmy, who's always talking about seeing the light, and can Alan see the light, and what have you. And well, Jimmy died in the train wreck, and Alan was the only one who survived, so Alan's going to go talk to the mother. And of course, she wants to know what he was doing on the train with Jimmy that whole time, and he says, well, I was an engineer, and I make things work, and he said, I was trying to get away from myself. We don't know why. It's sort of left to a mystery. And of course, he gets off his chest whatever he had to get off his chest to her, and he flies away as Green Lantern, leaving the taxi there that drove him there. Of course, it's his friend Derby Dickles, Doiby Dickles, as he was called in the original comics. So it was one of those slice of life stories. It was not an action story that truly defined Green Lantern, especially the Alan Scott Green Lantern. The second story I really, really liked because it got into the inner character of Hal Jordan, and it's more of a modern story. This one's by Jeff Johns, so you can't go wrong there. And the art is by Iwan Reyes, who was Critical Blast's comic book artist of the year for last year, as chosen by our readers. So again, two great talents on here. This one is it's called Last Will, and he's Alan Scott. Hal Jordan has crashed to the ground in a desert landscape. He's not sure where he is. He can't remember how he got there. It was a big battle. In fact, the blast was so bad that it has scrambled his ring's sensors. His ring doesn't know where they are. His ring is on 1% of power. And every time he asks it a question, it comes up with an error because the machinery just doesn't work. He asks if he can get a message out. The ring says, I have enough power to send out 3 messages. And then I'm going to go into full shutdown. So he sends 3 messages out. Just, because it's his last will and testament, so to speak. He wants to let his friends know where he is. So he sends out a message to the entire Green Lantern Corps. And apparently whoever you send the message to with the ring, they appear as sort of an avatar, so you can speak to them directly. He's letting them know, hey, I'm stranded somewhere. Try to find me. Sending out a beacon. Don't know what planet I'm on. Second message he sends to Batman. And it's basically this whole thing of, hey, Batman, sorry I was such a dick to you all those years. I really admire you, and you're such a great guy, and I wish I was more like you. And then he sends the last message to Carol Ferris, and it's all mushy, wishy, God, I love you kind of stuff. And the ring says, okay, shutting down now, powering off. I've got nothing left. And, the costume disappears. He's got no protection left. He doesn't even know if he can breathe, and then realizes he can breathe. And realizes he's not very far away from civilization, so to speak. And he's like, Ring, can you call those things back? Call those messages back. And of course it can. He's like, I'm never going to live this down. And it ends with a very nice panel of him never living it down with all his friends around him. We again get to our first pinups, which are going to be Joe Mullane of Far Spectre by Jamal Campbell. So yeah, the very first pinup we get is a brand new Green Lantern that nobody's heard of. The second pinup we get is by Bruce Timm and Dave Stewart, which is very cool. This is Hal Jordan. There's very much of a Darwin Cook aspect to this style here, so I'm really liking that. The third story is a Sinestro story, which is The Meaning of Fear by Cullen Bunn and Doug Mackey. Both of them, great storytellers, great artists. And it's a dying Green Lantern, and he's been beaten in battle, and Sinestro appears. Well, Sinestro, instead of helping him out, basically tells him how good of a Green Lantern he was and what the power of fear is. And he's like, hey, if you want to be powered by fear, I can give you a yellow ring. And Green Lantern there basically says, well, no, screw you. And he's like, well, okay, die, even, and shoots him through the head, and the Green Lantern ring flies off and says, I hope you can find a better ring bearer for this guy. Next pinup is another Hal Jordan one by Raphael Grandpa. I'm not pronouncing that right, I'm sure. It's an interesting take. Not sure why he's conjuring up a fetus in a womb curled up there, or why he's wearing a Michelin Green Lantern suit, but it's an interpretation, and that's what these all are. This next story is the only other story that's set in a distinct time period of the past. It's definitely the 70s, and this one is a Green Lantern and Green Arrow piece. And appropriately enough, it's written by Denny O'Neil and Mike Grell, two of the greatest of the Green Lantern, Green Arrow people from the 70s coming together. I guess they couldn't get Neil Adams to do it. That would have been the classic teaming of O'Neil and Adams. But it's Green Arrow taking down Clock King, and then Green Lantern shows up and stops him from beating the heck out of him. Says, no, you're not going to beat him to death anymore. And he's like, well, what got into you? You've been gone for 2 months. Well, guess what? Green Lantern decided to take a sabbatical for 2 months and 2 days to read Walden and get in touch with his pacifist side. We don't have to always hit people. And there's a lot of quoting of Thoreau through here, and Green Arrow, being the natural pacifist, supposedly, thinks it's a great idea, and he's going to do the same thing. So that's that. It's the hard traveling heroes getting a little peaceful. We then get a Kyle Rayner story called Legacy by Ron Mars and Daryl Banks, the team that brought us Kyle. This one is, I'm not digging this one. It was, seemed a little hastily done in the art department. And it had the kind of dialogue where it's basically Kyle is going into a storage warehouse where all of the Warriors bar stuff went that Guy Gardner was keeping. And when Warriors bar burnt down, all the stuff that survived went into this warehouse. And one of the things was a mech warrior that he thought was dormant that was still active, and it gets activated and everything gets trashed. And while Kyle is fighting the guy, the old man who runs the warehouse is telling him, I remember when you were this, and I remember when you were that, and boy, remember them Green Lanterns that did this. And it's just, it's a conversation meant to tell a history in the middle of a fight that just, it doesn't work. It's never really worked. Dialogue as narrative never works out. So thumbs down on that one. Then we get another pinup here. This one's Jessica Cruz with the artwork being done by Joel Jones and Jordi Belair. And this would be a good time to tell you that there is no Humble Frog Merchant work in this Green Lantern piece. So if you were expecting to see at least a pinup, this would have been the one that would have happened, and it did not. So just letting you all know that now. The next story is a Guy Gardner and Kilowog story, Heart of the Core, from Peter J. Tomasi and Fernando Passarin. And it's not bad. It's one of those heartwarming stories, you know. So, oh, we're all family, aren't we? And it's you know, Gardner and Kilowog have been sent to a planet. Gardner's been told to take Kilowog there as a partner. There's an evil force hiding out, and they get to the planet and they find an underground bunker. The rings are pinging on life forces down there. Let's get down there and kick some ass. And well, when they get down there, it's like all of the Green Lanterns are waiting there, and there's a big lantern battery, and it's happy birthday, Kilowog. And I'm thinking, you know, they must do this every day because there's like over 2,400 Green Lanterns, and there's only 365 days in a year. So I don't know. It was a nice, feel-good story with some really good artwork. You just can't think too much about it. That's all I can tell you about that. I'm saying that way too much for somebody who's actually been trained for public speaking, but this was sort of an impromptu idea to review this way. Reverse the Polarity is the next story from Charlotte Fullerton McDuffie and Crisscross. And it is a story featuring the John Stewart Green Lantern and Hawkgirl, which sort of plays off of the Justice League Unlimited relationship that they had. And they have brought a rare element to the Watchtower, and they're guarding it. They've been charged with bringing it there, and John's like, well, it's a good thing they had us do this. Just totally full of himself. And they get attacked immediately by Dr. Polaris because, he says, I knew you'd be bringing it here. Well, okay. It's the Justice League Watchtower. It's where they bring everything they take that's going to be of any kind of power. Every supervillain of any note should be in orbit around the Watchtower waiting and saying, okay, are they going in with something that I want? And attacking. But, again, overthinking it. Whatever it is that they're bringing in, it's going to ramp up Dr. Polaris' power by a factor of 10. But then John Stewart takes it over with force of will, and it amps up his ring by power of 10, and it's more than he can handle. Polaris is down, John is down. Hawkgirl saves John, gives him big hugs, put the thing away, fight over. Again, could have been any backup story in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps. Next pinup is Kelly Quintela, Teen Lantern from Young Justice, who is totally given a different origin in the back of this book other than her hacking the power battery, but we'll get to that later. The art is by Dave LaFuente and Anderson Cabral. And here she is. She's riding her cartoon tractor and looking a bit like a cartoon herself. So that is pinup. Is there a pinup on the other side? Yes, there is. There's a pinup of Tai Pham from Green Lantern Legacy with art by Andy Tong and Alejandro Sanchez. This is well drawn here. Again, I'm not into the whole Legacy, Elseworlds kind of thing. But I also haven't read it. I know a little bit about it. I don't know that it fits into the mainstream mythos of Green Lantern. If it does, great. The next story here is a nice one. I really like it. It's probably my favorite story in the whole bunch here. It's called Four, and it's by Robert Venditti and Rafa Sandoval. And it's set in the future, not the far future, but like, our lifetime future. And it features Kyle Rayner, Hal Jordan, and Jon Stewart meeting at a bar. And they're telling stories about the four of them. The fourth one being Guy Gardner, and how, they would enter, one of them would say, well, I was in this battle, and Guy Gardner was getting hit all the time, and it, created the opening I needed. And that was the theme of all the stories, was that, they were, they'd be down for the last count, and Guy Gardner would come in and do something stupid, which would attract the villain's attention, and he'd turn to Guy Gardner, start pummeling in the face, and there was the opening they needed, and they just attacked right then and knocked the villain out, and Guy Gardner was just laughing all the way, just begging them to hit him. And Jon Stewart's the one who's figured it out. It's like, I'd rather have Guy Gardner in my corner than Batman, because Guy Gardner knew that as long as they hated him and attacked him, they weren't thinking about going after his friends, and he was doing it as a defense mechanism. And of course, Guy Gardner has passed away, and they, these older Green Lanterns here, you can see Hal Rayner is they're all older. They meet at the grave site for their friend Guy Gardner, who's got just a little plain tombstone with a Green Lantern emblem on it. Says Guy Gardner, hero, lantern, friend. This is followed by a Kyle Rayner pinup by Sarah Stone. And it's sort of him with one of his mecha constructs, which he used to enjoy doing back in the day when he was a character. They go downhill from here in story-wise. The next story is by Mariko Tamaki and Mirka Andolfo. That's Jessica Cruz story, and it's called The Voice. And it's basically just dealing with her anxieties. How she's got her anxiety voice and her normal voice inside her head fighting with each other all the time. Bad things happen in her life, and she connects them to things that have absolutely no relationship to them. Like this, in this particular case, it's a steak knife in her house. And every time she's touched the steak knife and she gets a phone call, she has to go do something bad. Well, is it the steak knife? Is that what's causing it? And it's just nagging at her all the time. And the way she deals with it is she gets called onto a mission by Simon Baz. There's a giant hammerhead shark thing. And rather than worry about whether the steak knife is bad or not, she just conjures up a great big old frickin' giant one and sends it right through him. And that's how she deals with the anxiety of the steak knife. And the story is over. I don't know if that was supposed to be cathartic or come to some sort of a resolution about her anxieties. I didn't feel it, but there it was. We have a pinup now of Guy Gardner by Joe Staton and Hi-Fi. So we get the appropriate Joe Staton style, which is kind of animated, kind of cartoony. I enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it in Millennium, but that was a long time ago. That's water under the bridge. The next story, I really started liking it at the beginning. It's a Simon Baz story. And it's by Sina Grace and Ramon Villalobos. So on the first page, the very first page of the story, it's called Homegrown Hero. Simon's returning to his family. He's meeting them at the airport. They're picking up his aunt, and they're loading all her suitcases into the back of the car. And he's like, he's getting there too late to help pick up suitcases, which is just like him, they're saying. And they all know he's Green Lantern. And everything's great. He's going to meet them here. She saw some movie on the plane. And she's going to tell him back. She's like, no, don't spoil the ending for me. And the daughter says, wait, you didn't finish telling us what the customs officer said to you. And here we go. It's the cringe fest. And they're driving, and she's saying, so right as I'm finishing at customs, this man says to me so fast and under his breath, go back to your country. To me. So I turn my head to him and I say, too late. Okay, are you saying you were born here because you just came from the other country with your suitcases to visit? I don't get that. So for snappy comebacks, sorry. But more to the point was the fact of the racist customs agent is such a cliche, and that's not even the worst part of this story. No, we go to the art walk because that's where the niece wants to take her aunt, show her, hey, look, we're doing a neighborhood art walk, and the female Muslim artists, specifically female Muslim artists, are putting on this art walk, and there's a guy there who looks out of place. Well, why does he look out of place? Because out of everybody else there, he's white. He's the only guy who's white. And he has, oh my God, a baseball cap on. Now, if I gave you a box of 16 crayons, fresh, cellophane still on it, you had to take the cellophane off, which crayon would you pick to color the hat? If you said that he's wearing a red baseball cap, you'd be absolutely right. And the cap is very well hidden or positioned throughout the story that you'd never get to see the front of it. But come on, we all know what's on the front of that red cap, don't we? I know what's on the front of that red cap. And I have one. So it's like, now Simon's like, his sister's pointing him out saying, he looks suspicious. He's doing that. And Simon, to his credit, tells her, he says, you're racial profiling here. And she says, okay, great, that's fine. But can you at least ask your ring if he's like carrying weapons on him? And he's like, says, okay, fine. Yeah, sure. Then he sighs. He says, hey, ring, is that guy carrying a gun, knife, bomb, or something under that ugly coat? And the ring, of course, comes back, says, detecting one automatic assault weapon and additional loads of ammunition on his person. Yes, he was there to shoot the place up. Oh my God, the white guy in the camo pants and the red baseball cap was a racist. And Simon just tries to disarm it and says, look, you're not gonna do this here. We're gonna call the police, and you're not gonna pull the gun on me. And the guy manages to pull the gun out on Simon, which everything gets blocked. He says, you will not parade our streets, and the only stains you'll make on our walls is with blood. And then Simon just kind of flies him over the city, hangs him upside down, says, look at this. This is how God sees us. We're all beautiful. I don't see, Sunni or Shia. I don't see human or alien. It's just a bunch of us trying to live together. And you're going to have to try to get along. Call the police. And that's that. So I don't know why I expected more out of that story. I don't know why well, first of all, it was Cena Grace, so at the very least, Simon Baz isn't gay, is he? I really don't know. I haven't read that much about him. Now, that would have been daring. If Cena Grace, who's best known for writing characters who are gay, and he's a self-insert in all of those stories, like Iceman, had decided to create a gay Muslim character, that would have been daring. Instead, he takes the easy, cheap shot route of, the red baseball cap guy is bad. So overall, this had some good stories in it. The two stories that I really liked were not worth $10. Again, every story in here was a backup story for a Tales from the Green Lantern Corps. None of this, not even the really good stories, were of the caliber you would want for an 80th anniversary 100-page, super spectacular thrill ride. And then in the back of it, we do get these secret file pages, which are just a couple of a paragraph or two about many of the different Green Lanterns that we've seen throughout the years. Of course, all seven of the Earth Green Lanterns, including Alan Scott. 8, I guess, if you want to count. 9, I guess, if you want. We have a lot of Green Lanterns on Earth. Space is a big place, but we got so many problems here. We have to have multiple Green Lanterns. Like the back cover, like what they did with that. That was kind of cool. The DC logo inside of the Green Lantern. They should do that on all the Green. They should make that the indicia on all the Green Lantern books. So anyway, hopefully I've saved you $10. you can buy 2 regular, real good comics with $10 at $5 a pop. And for a Green Lantern fan, I bought it for the cover. I'll be honest. And having bought it for the cover, I can now put it in the bag, seal it up, and look at the cover and not have to worry about the contents anymore. For criticalblast.com, I am RJ Carter, and we thank you for watching this review.